Good morning from New Zealand and Australia, Exiles. I'm Ziggy D here, joined by Chris Wilson. Once again, good morning, Chris.
Hey, how are things going?
Hello, Chef Práci.
Very good, very good. You guys always make our day on reveal day.
We work very hard to do that, yeah.
A pretty spicy one this time. However, I do have to lead off with the most important question first before we get into the rest of the Q&A, and that is, were those training dummies the militia using real, or is it just an elaborate bait? Are we getting training dummies?
Sometimes to fish you need elaborate bait, so I think that's a good analogy there.
I think that might be a no, Chad. maybe in both of Exile too. Then maybe. I'll keep holding my breath for that one. But welcome back, folks. Please post.
Nebylo nic o Path of Exile 2, neříkali, že něco bude.
During this, as always, I have some questions pre-prepared based on my earlier watching of the announcements. You slipped some new stuff in there as well, like such as patch notes coming right after this time as well. So you guys are ready. You guys are ready.
Yeah. It really helps having to write up a lot of the patch notes for the Balance Manifesto in advance. That means there's a lot of other stuff obviously, but it's doable.
So early manifesto also means early patch notes. I thought early manifesto meant.
Měl bych nastavit oholenou lepku, jako má Chris Wilson.
It also means early development, which is great as well.
That is very good. All right, well, we'll kick things off with the new Pinnacle content and Atlas of World changes. That is the big focus of this expansion. A big end game update. And I have to say the design of the new Eldritch bosses looks awesome, very creepy. Are the Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds being placed? Where are they being placed in challenge level related to the Maiden?
Exarch and Eater of Worlds.
So the goal is that they're slightly more challenging. We do want to keep pushing the boundaries there. It's not massively so, but a key thing here is that you can roll some mods on the keys that give you access to them once you've killed them for the first time. So after like the quest completion of it, you then get the ability to farm them, and that involves itemized versions of the maps. And because you can roll mods, of course, it lets you punch up the challenge and reward quite a lot higher than you would otherwise be able to do it. So it should be very interesting to see.
O Julie bavíš se o Watchstone?
With changing that.
Watchstone prý už nebudou.
Like a rare version of them.
So my understanding is that the mods can increase the rewards in traditional ways with regard to increasing quantity of drops, but I'll just double check to see if there's any other special stuff. So I'm going to do the dev check emoji.
Oh, that's a record for dev check, I think.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
But basically, Quant will scale all of their special drops as well. So whatever they're getting in terms of uniques and currency that you want, you just scale it as hard as you can.
Ah, that's good, because it doesn't always scale those like special specific
Nemesis
drops. It
3 nebude.
sounds like it does in this case.
I think there's a specific note on the item that mentions that quantity affects it, which helps in this case. It'll hopefully make it clear.
I remember that Maven was initially pitched at being like the highest level boss fight, so now we've got another tier above that.
Takže to s Mavenou srovnávají, takže to budou nějaký dva bossové, který budou těžší. Jo, takhle,
You'll probably find that if you play the fight without scaling it at all, like completely default settings, it's probably easier than the fixed Maven difficulty, but the average way that players are going to experience it with a comfortable level of juice.
Takže to vypadá, že ty nový dva bossové budou o něco jednodušší než Maven, když je nebudete vůbec juice. Ale když tam dáte nějaký mody, tak budou těžší.
Yeah, you get them on the way through the quest progression and also on the way to doing the farm cycle. So they're easier, of course, but they still drop good endgame stuff, but just not quite as good as the absolute pinnacle ones do.
Nějaký ty sub-bossové? Memory games.
I hear players love those. Now we'll have to say, I honestly can't remember if there's a memory game.
Oh no.
I passed that one.
Very good. So the Atlas is undergoing.
Nemůže si vzpomenout, jestli jsou tam nějaký hry na paměť.
Complexity in some areas and depth, whereas it's been slimming things down in other areas. What have you guys learned from previous iterations of the Atlas so far, and how has this shaped the new generation that we're getting now?
This is kind of a very standard game design lesson, but simplicity and understandability matters, but you also don't want to lose any depth. And so, to some extent, like what we did with Path of Exile 2's skill gem system, is we've tried to make this more approachable, right? Like when you look at the Atlas now, it's simple. There are just a bunch of maps. You work from bottom to top, fighting harder maps, and you don't have to worry about regions. You don't have to worry about repeating work or chasing conquerors around. It's quite straightforward. You don't have to understand the complexities of the watchstones, because the new void stones are so much simpler. You just stick them in as you get them, pretty much. And so at face value, it takes away a lot of the stuff that was hard for players to understand and annoying for players who did understand it. But then in return, we didn't want to lose any depth. And so we jammed it all in the passive tree. And so there's a lot of stuff there. But players who get that far in Path of Exile are very used to passive trees and understanding the type of opportunity cost and the decisions they're making. So it actually plays really well. And you can interact with the passive trees so much earlier. In fact, so much of the rewards of the Atlas now are pushed really early in terms of you getting Eldritch Implicits and getting to fight bosses and getting
to je fakt dobrý.
Atlas tree completion.
Že nemusíte dělat tier 14 mapy, aby se k něčemu dostali, ale až od začátku.
Previously it kind of felt like the end game starts at the end of the end game.
Přesně. Až než jsem mohl začít farmit tower, musel jsem mít hotový celý atlas, úplně vymaštěný. Teďko to bude mnohem lepší.
It's the slimming down of the core progression system. So now you just kind of run maps from 1 to 16 as the core progression, right? Like you don't have to do any complicated steps of moving watchstones and chasing influence and all that sort of stuff to do the core progression. So that's much simplified now.
Yes.
There's not like any secret hoops there or anything you have to jump through, right?
Right, it's very simple. And the other thing is there's now 3 Atlas quest progressions that you can progress at your own pace. You've got 2 different new Eldritch Horrors to chase with their sub-bosses, and you've got the Maven. And you can focus on one or all 3 or whatever you want to do. There's no penalty for not doing one. It's just a matter of which content and rewards you want to get.
Jakým způsobem se bude progresovat Maven?
Kind of where is Maven's position now in this whole progression system? Because before you had
to
constantly be witnessing bosses to get passives, the passive tree. And my understanding is she still gives you some passives, but predominantly those passives come from just completing the bonus objectives on the maps themselves. Like I imagine 100 of those come from those, and then the remaining 17 from boss fights and Maven and whatnot. So where does she kind of sit now?
Right, in terms of the passive, so 117 come from completing maps, and then there's an additional 15 bonus points. So 11 are from the Maven encounters. So that's her primary purpose there, is giving you a bunch of points. And 5 of them are from the standard invitations. 6 of them are from the invitations that were previously called the Uncharted Realms encounters. There's also 4 more points that you get from the new siege bosses. So the 4 guys, the Searing Exarch, the Eater of Worlds, the Black Star, and the Infinite Hunger all have a point each upon the time that you kill them.
Dvouslovný názvy, to se to podělám.
The Maven also has a more defined role in terms of itemizations. She's now the source for awakened gems, which of course are as powerful as they always have. Yeah, that's complete lie.
Nejen z Maveny, ze všech invitation Mavenovských budou
awakened, but as powerful as they were last league.
Zruší profesi, to tam zmíněno nebylo, ale to už víme dávno.
The Orb of Conflict,
a to bude special
is really important for the Eldritch mod crafting. So if you're wanting to perfect your Eldritch Implicits, you're going to need to fight all 3 bosses, so you can get A and B and the thing that lets you get one of them to the highest tier.
She's like some weird neutral third party then. She drops the Orb of Conflict, she's kind of like overseeing the conflict between the others.
Z Maveny budou padat takový, hele, získal jsem drop, co vy, vyzvednout.
It makes sense.
Nice.
Yeah, and we kicked her in the shins a bunch of times, and now our families showed up to wreck us. So that's awesome. Okay, well that answers a bunch of my questions. I really like that shifting of the complexity over to the passive tree away from the core progression. Is there much reason to like use Maven witnessing boss fights early on then, or is it mostly just get some of those passives early, or some of those awakened gems potentially?
It's good for you to get passives as fast as you can, because they will make it faster for you to play through content implicitly. It increases the rate you're getting rewards and so on. So I suspect players will choose to do it as soon as they're capable of doing it. Of course, as we know, those fights aren't super easy, so people will find
to je super.
How do we respect
to je super. No, to je respekt, mě taky zajímá.
Making at least has to be made a lot more common.
Yeah, it's been moved to the core drop pool basically, so you find orbs when making it a better pace. And yeah, I mean, like all things in Path of Exile, you can fix your mistakes. It's just a pain to do so on a large scale. So we're not expecting people to change their Atlas loadout between maps, but they'll find something that works well for them. And the nice thing, of course, now is it applies to every map on the Atlas, so you don't have to like ignore 3/4 of them because they don't have some specific thing you've specialized in.
I'm gonna ruin chat, by the way, and just say I just got my drop. Thanks. I have a question about co-op progression this time around. Has anything kind of changed there? Can both players unlock their skill tree passives together fully? Like, it was kind of a half and half sort of deal before with the old Atlas system, where you could unlock some map progression, but a lot of the stuff was not, wouldn't work in co-op effectively.
My understanding is that all of the stuff, providing you're at the right quest state, all of the quest stuff will unlock for everyone in the party. And of course, if you're in a map when it gets completed, and you'd normally get a bonus completion for that, then you do get the completion here. So yeah, I'm unaware of any issues playing through in co-op, and that's something we're trying to be very mindful of. We don't want to, you know, cause problems for people that want to play through the entire game as a party, and that even applies to like Archnemesis and so on. We're trying to not repeat mistakes from the past where some leagues don't work in co-op.
That's very promising. Yeah, you guys have been getting better with co-op implementation of stuff, which is good because I've been co-oping every league start now, so it's good to see that. Do you imagine that even like boss fights and stuff will unlock co-op progression? Because I know some of that stuff has been turned off a little bit in the past because it was potentially abusable.
Yeah, we have to stop the abuse cases because we don't want a system where, like at the moment, if you want to play Path of Exile alone or with friends who aren't in your instance, just chatting to them while you're playing, this works. You can have a great experience. You know, there's no reason why you absolutely have to bring friends to Path of Exile. Of course, it's good for social reasons, but games that allow abuse get to this situation where you're either kind of forcing yourself to only play when your friends are playing, or sitting there with 6 Path of Exile clients open doing complicated stuff that isn't actually playing the game. And so that's the reason why we curb the abuse there. But where possible, we want to allow it so that it works well for legitimate groups of players.
Gotcha. One final question before we move to a couple of your questions on this particular topic area. Where's Zana going? Kirak said that she's going into Exile, except
možná, že Zana nebude ještě teďko. Buď to bude překvapení Zana v téhle lize.
We're not going to give any more info on that. Players can hopefully work it out over time. Like, you know, that's why you play the game, right? To find things out. So.
Okay, takže je možný, že Zana bude nový ultra mega boss.
Seriously though, like a lot of people like Zana. Is there?
A jde o to, jestli bude už v téhle lize jako mega boss, a nebo třeba přijde za rok.
Play a bit coy on that one. We'll see. I mean, we're not just going to forget about it.
That's a definite yes, chat. I mean, she's a great little plot thing that can be thrown in somewhere.
Expanze, Atlas, Aliga jsou nový bossové. Ne, já to potom komentuju.
Alright, we have a couple of viewers from chats. Joe Bobs asks, are Atlas passive allocations per character or account?
These are per account, I believe. So it's per, we call this per league account, basically. So on your account, you have a separate allocation.
Zase všecko, co si viděli expanze. Jediný, co je liga, jsou takový ty 4 skamenělý monstři v mapě. Tato liga je mikroskopická, všechno ostatní je expanze a to je všude jinde.
It's Awakener level 8.
Okay, wow. Yeah. That's kind of what happened with the recent change as well, right? Like it shifted upwards like that.
Yeah, may as well have it be hard.
Yeah, may as well. Especially now that it's not like core content, it's chase content for you to do later on potentially.
Yeah, the Conqueror stuff is pretty optional.
That's a good.
No, pretty optional, ale když člověk bude chtít influence předměty.
Conquerors in all caps, by the way, they're excited about this.
Caps. Can we witness Conquerors? Yeah, you can.
You can. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So that means potentially a new Conqueror boss fight then. From Maven.
Conqueror's invitation.
What happens to the unique watchstones? Nobus asks.
Unique watchstone, ty byly asi smazaný, ne?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we just eradicated.
Přesně.
And, yeah. All watchstones are gone.
Všechny watchstony smazaný.
That strips a couple of things.
Jedeš standard?
As well. Is there any like buff to his loot drops or anything to compensate, or just?
Cyrus still has good stuff, right?
He does, sure.
Yeah. They're nodding like, of course he has good stuff.
Cyrus má furt všechno stejný, kromě watchstone, ne? Kromě Awakened Gem.
I don't have a name for. Seems like a lot of currency or bloat. Can you explain what currency was chosen as solutions this time around?
Well, the key thing about currency is that it's tradable. And tradable means that if you do not know how to use it, or you don't have a good opportunity to use it, you're able to trade it to someone else who does better. And so you can get these Eldritch, orbs and essentially just say, I give up, someone else make my items for me, and trade them and get a direct item you want. You hand someone a pile of this currency, they hand you a finished item, essentially. This is how trade works.
I've never thought of trade like that, but it kind of works.
The thing, I mean, obviously, the smart thing to do is to do it yourself and make your best items and not have someone else make a profit on it, of course. But for players who do not want to engage in that for whatever reason, they can trade. And it also means if you've got some of one, but you actually want Searing Exarch ones, you can trade them with the other person and so on.
We'll transition now into that whole Eldritch crafting topic, but it seems like we're getting a little bit of Harvest-esque stuff here, some Harvest-inspired things in these Eldritch currencies, particularly with the Chaos Orb, rerolling prefixes or suffixes, annulling prefixes or suffixes, exaltix prefixes or suffixes. It's less targeted than some Harvest stuff, but it's kind of in that line, so are you guys excited to move in that direction a little bit with this?
This is a safe way of us doing it. It lets us have these powerful orbs. I mean, I should emphasize they're not easy to get, right? Like, you know, we're talking like special exalts here that obviously are going to be rarer than regular exalts. And so it's a way that we're pretty comfortable because it does require some manipulation of what you're doing with the tiers of the implicit mods, and you know, it's baking in a little bit of meta crafting, but done in a much more safe way that's not quite so combinable with other crazy stuff. So we're more comfortable with this, and it's actually quite a lot of fun to craft items this way.
Yeah, I get it. You kind
of Awaken Gemu a bez Unique
My dream is to like have later you guys add a little step where you can like
meč, helmu, rukavice,
you know, modifier fire or something like that, like killing a specific high level boss or something like that. But anyway, I'm just
a skutečně jako většina z toho je dobrá.
So are there any risks or major downsides to the new Eldritch implicit crafting system aside from potentially replacing an existing implicit?
Takže celkem nevidím problém.
Item at all?
No, there's no way to break an item. We've basically designed it so that as long as you're okay to replace the implicit that's on something, which is what you just hinted at, then it's generally strictly better. You know, I mean, there might be border cases where having a mod on an item is bad for your build because you really don't want to set things on fire or whatever it is, but other than that, you know, it's always helping your item.
Je super, že tímhle si skutečně odstraňují nutnost influencu těch věcí. A pro ty normální je to prostě power creep. To je fakt super.
So the main goal here is that you're able to progress your implicits at the same time that you're progressing your explicit mods on an item. We didn't want a thing where you have to like craft a finished item and then have a one-shot go at getting the implicits like corruption. Nor did we want something where if you find a perfect item on the ground, you're screwed to get the implicits that you want. And so if you find an amazing rare item, you, through whatever means, you're able to then make it have amazing implicits on it. And you also won't feel bad putting a lesser implicit. Like if you just get an orb and put an implicit on it, it makes the item better, and you can totally replace that and upgrade it later. There's no problem as you're playing through maps randomly adding implicits to your items, because eventually you can still get the same item into the right place later on.
Random clarification, when you use one of the orbs to increase the tier of the affix, if I'm understanding that correctly, does it change what implicit that is, or does it just increase its tier?
Yeah, it does re-roll. So there are 4 currency items, and this is super complicated because the word tier, like tier 1 implies the best, right? But when I say higher tier, I'm referring to like tier 1 being the lowest. So we're just going to use clearer language. There are 6 ranks of each mod, 1 through 6. The first one, the lowest one, comes from the lowest currency item. That drops on all maps. And then the second 2 will drop from influenced monsters and influenced maps. And the fourth one, which is the highest you can get from a currency item, drops from the big bosses. There are 2 ranks above that which cannot be rolled from currency. Those must only be upgraded to with an Orb of Conflict. Whenever you apply one of these orbs to the item, it picks a random mod from the pool and applies it. So you may get something that isn't the one you want. You do have to spam the currency a bit if you were looking for a specific mod.
Yep.
But there's no downside to that. It's not corrupting your item. Aside from the wealth investment that you're making in the item and the ease of trading or finding them, it's entirely just a matter of sinking wealth into the item to get exactly what you're wanting. And in return, of course, they're blindingly powerful. But then once you have the mods that you're wanting, the Orb of Conflict will upgrade and lower them. Sure, you may get a lowering that you don't want, and that wastes some time or resources, but that mod is then fixed in place as that type that's being upgraded or lowered. So, in practice, it's a pretty fun system to actually play with currency.
That's interesting, because that's pretty different to a lot of crafting in Path of Exile, where there's no real lose case where your previous investment in the item is ruined, but rather the only risk is, well, how much do I have to spend to get the thing that I want this time around? So is that kind of like an intentional decision then?
Tam bylo vydat majnovaný, jaký existují ty implicity.
Certainly is. It'll create a situation where you're lucky with your rank 3 mod that you get on an item. It's perfect. You love this one. You'd like a rank 4 version though, but applying the rank 4 thing is potentially going to take a bunch of them to get the same mod, because, you know, the pool's got a bunch of diversity in there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you could use an Orb of Conflict for this, because you've got basically got a 50% chance that you get rank 4 out of it, and so people are going to have to make some decisions. And that's what games are.
Decisions. That's what games are. Perfect. So good games are, I like it.
Clicking and decisions.
Yes, clicking and decisions. Can you craft the Eldritch implicits on unique items as well?
No.
Ah, okay. So, and this is only for helmets, boots, gloves, body armor, so just for
yes, that's correct.
Aha.
I mean, this may gradually expand in the future, but for the time being,
zatím je to jenom na zbrojových součástech. To je zajímavé. Já myslel, že to už bude i na lucích třeba. To je zajímavá informace, to teďka nebylo řečeno. To znamená, to, co šlo elevatenout, to teďko půjde tomu dát implicit.
That's ideally what you want, is that uniques are kind of guaranteed power, and then rares have the potential to be better, and this helps achieve that.
So the implicits aren't going to have item level requirements.
No, levelovací.
Using them on a low level item affect their like required level. Can these be used for leveling characters? For
example? Basically, if you were to put one on a low level item, it punches the required level up to something stratospheric that's in maps, because these are like, you know, flat fire damage to all spells.
Tak to jsem blbě pochopil předtím. Oni totiž required item level mysleli, ale podle mě jenom říkali required level.
Right, so you could
Oni se bavili o item levelu, a ne o required level.
You just wouldn't be able to use it unless you're on your high character.
Yeah, you find like a really good pair of boots at level 50 or something.
Yeah, and this is like 68 plus or whatever. It's not like, you know, insanity high.
Yeah, okay. So I imagine that makes sense. I imagine.
Takže nebudou nový levelovací předměty, škoda.
Got it. Ben the Muffin Man asks, can you get a third implicit by corrupting the item that has 2 Eldritch implicits already?
My understanding is that corrupting the item will remove the existing implicits and put the random corrupted one.
Jeden.
Yep.
Všechny?
So yes, if you want to corrupt an item to get a corrupted implicit, you'll lose all your hard work on the Eldritch implicits. But as you mentioned, Eldritch implicits cannot be placed on uniques, and so corruption still has a very valid place there.
Normálně korupce odstraní jenom jeden implicit a ten to nahradí.
Why is it called Archnemesis?
Well, Nemesis was really the only time we've actually worked on improving how rare monsters work. A very long time ago we said, you know what, let's add some mods to the pool. And Archnemesis is the second time that we're working on improving rare monsters, and it's also a really cool sounding name. Like, there was no debate when we're having our brainstorming session for names, right? Someone said Archnemesis, and people kind of drifted out of the room and started typing it in their documents, and you know what I mean? Like, it just ended at that point. You know, we all knew that was the name.
It was just decided collaboratively.
It is not on the metal banned list, but that doesn't mean that it can't be.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be.
We need people in the community to make metal bands called Archnemesis.
There probably is one out there for sure, right? There's got to be. It's a solid name. But I was like, so what are the Archnemesis monsters there? Because I see there's like a statue, and then there's a rare monster chained to the statue. So the rare monster is the thing we're fighting, not the statue. Right. The statue is the thing they're chained to.
A ten statue může být nějaký superboss?
We pick a bunch of rares, or adding rares to the area, of course, because we don't want to take your rares away. And we basically get some rare monsters from a disparate set of types where possible. So it's a variety of rares that can spawn in that area. Chain them statues, and we spawn more than you need. We want you to be having the ability to do 4, but we don't want a situation where the 4th one is hiding around some corner somewhere you didn't explore. And so we spawn like, I can't remember the number, like 6 of these or something like that. I failed the memory game again. And we spawn like 6 of them, so that as you play through the area, you'll probably encounter all 4 without having to backtrack. Only the first 4 work, but basically empowering one of those monsters will let you fight that rare, and of course it'll, like, you know, have quite a big fight associated with it. Some of those mods do some pretty crazy stuff.
That sounds like new tech, kind of, the idea of like having a bunch of...
Teďko vidím tak 85% na to, že budu začít v standardu.
Yeah, the level team have been doing some good work over the last few years at adding the ability for us to do fun stuff like this, you know, inserting things into levels, having like, you know, the ability to have like flow graphs of where players can move around the level, and we can predict where we'll be early in a level versus late in a level to spawn stuff, you know, for like delirium mirrors and so on.
It's kind of big because, like you said, it prevents backtracking, which is a big deal, making that like core gameplay loop feel better.
Yeah.
It's great news.
But yes, to answer your question, the Archnemesis monster is the petrified rare that's attached to the statue.
Okay. I feel like there's some secret with the statue, but I might be reading too much into this. It's just because Archnemesis means like the main nemesis. Is my understanding of the definitions. I'm kind of wondering who is the main nemesis. Anyway, I'm just theory crafting, being suspicious. Archnemesis modifier goober things have their own inventory menu for storage, which is certainly a nice improvement over other similar mechanics in the past. Well done. However, when you click them, do they automatically go straight to that menu since they aren't tradable anyway?
That's correct. They automatically go there. You don't need to go through the inventory. We should also talk about clicking here, because we have spent 13 weeks preparing for today, where players are going to say, but these don't auto pick up. Do you not learn? Like, they're going to be sitting there scratching their head going, seriously, GGG, we've told you by now it's auto pick up or nothing, right? So we've been prepared for this. You don't have to find very many of these per area. It is usually around 2, right? And I know in the past I've said that expedition stuff didn't auto pick up because you don't find many, and then when you actually play it, it scales to like 16 in the crazy juice maps, and yes, that is too many. These mods don't scale. You're finding like 2, maybe 3, but I'm wanting this to be 2 ideally. And so yes, you'll have to probably click twice per area. The thing is, the inventory space, while large, is not completely unlimited, right? Like, there are cases where auto pickup would be annoying. And so we've actually also identified the fact that we need to give more inventory space, which is present in the footage you've seen, where we've increased it to an 8x8 inventory, giving you plenty. In all of our internal testing until like literally 3 days ago, it was a 5x5 inventory, having this awesome constraint thing where players are like frustrated at having to choose what they're carrying around and make decisions, and we love decisions. But at the end of the day, we realized that would not be popular, and so we've significantly increased the space up to 64 slots, which should be plenty. And if you're lucky, you'll find there may even be footage of the 5x5 inventory floating around the internet, because the B-roll footage we gave to journalists earlier this week was still when it was 5x5. And so we had to refilm the entire Archnemesis section of the live stream at the last minute with a new 8x8 inventory so that people don't melt down about the limited amount of space there.
Nice. Well, I often disagree with you on this topic in some capacity, but I will give you that this time it's a good case for us manually picking these up, given that we don't necessarily want all of them, and we want to be a little bit choosy with them, maybe.
And it really is like 2 per area that you'll find, and if it's something where you're well into deep, complicated recipes, 4 tiers deep, and then the most common thing ever drops, you're probably not going to want to pick that one up. In addition, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, we are supporting filtering of these. Yeah, you can interact with them with loop filters, and that means that someone will quickly work out what the valuable ones are and make it so people understand whether they even need to make the 2 clicks or not. I'd recommend it during the campaign because you need the reagents to climb the higher recipes, and even the bad ones that give you like some, triple weapon reward or something that you don't necessarily value will be very important to bolster up the complicated recipes that rely on těch rewardů. So it's not as obvious as there being good or bad mods, but there are certainly cases where you've already got 7 of something and you don't need an 8th.
Okay, a couple follow-up questions. So you said you're aiming this at being like 2 clicks per zone.
Zajímalo by mě, jestli budou nějaký Archnemesis uniky. Pokud
ano,
asi budu muset tu ligu hrát. Pokud ani nebudou existovat Archnemesis uniky, podle mě nebude důvod hrát Archnemesis.
You're going to want to save up for recipes and have a plan. So if you have a completed recipe, you may as well use it.
Pravděpodobně nějaký solo self-found Archnemesis dám, ale jinak
there are cases where you're not completing a recipe, but you're spending mods because you may as well, or you want to, or you've come up with some cool reward combination. But generally speaking, when you're playing through, you don't necessarily feel the need to want to juice out every single statue that you find. You're doing it often enough. Like every second area, you'll probably do a very complicated fight. And for some players, they'll spend their 2 in every area if they're doing simple recipes. But yeah, it's okay to find one where you don't have a mod in order to unlock the monster, because there will be plenty more later on.
Okay. For the people that want to hoard, if you want to hoard, can you pick them up, put them in your regular inventory and stash and things like that as well?
They must stay there, and that's why we increased the count from 25 slots to 64. And this is a surplus now. It's fine, but yes, people who wanted to hoard were having problems at 25, which is something we decided not to have a day 1 Reddit thread of do they not think, and so we decided to think about that one beforehand.
So you've got 2 angles here. They're non-tradable, and you've got to use them or lose them. So use the mechanic, right? Use the.
This isn't clear from the footage because we're still working on the UI for it, but they do have levels that affect the item you get out. You know, when you're getting like beasts and bestiary, and the item level of the output is related to the inputs and that kind of stuff. It's the same here. If you find one in the mudflats as you're playing through the campaign, and you think, I'm going to be smart and save that for maps, because that's going to be a component to when I get really good uniques or something. No, it's locked at being relatively
na všechny zprávy odpovím, až tohle skončí, nebojte se.
Now, we're doing a bunch of stuff to be permissive with levels there, so if you find something in Act 1 and you spend it in late Act 1 or early Act 2, it's still, impactful. Like, we're giving some level grace there, but at the same time, the intention is that you just pick up a bunch through the campaign, and when you hit maps, you've got 64 reagents good to go for the good rewards. And so because of that, yes, you do want to be using them or losing them pretty much.
Alright, okay. Is there much point to killing the Archnemesis without the modifiers? They still have their own kind of like set rewards, or is it just kind of basic as killing a rare normally?
You can only release the monster attached to the statue by expending a reward.
Oh.
So you may choose to expend spare rewards, just releasing monsters and getting the stuff from them. Like, I find a thing that gives me a currency reward. If it's not part of my master plan, I should probably pick it up and just use it on the next statue so I get a fight and get some rewards. But you can't just tag the rares and fight them without giving them a property.
Oh wow, so it really is potentially an every other map sort of situation, or stockpile for a while and then blast them for 10 maps.
A lot of, because you're getting around 2 per area, a lot of fights are totally fine with 2. Like that's what you're kind of wanting to do. So you may, playing the default way, get to have a fight in every area, but you'll also find situations where you want to build up to 4. There's also the thing where we don't just assume the players can handle a 4 fight, right? Like that's quite tricky. You want to have a look at what type of monster it is. Maybe if you have a 4 fight that you want to do, it's better to put it on something small like a squid or something like that, rather than you know, necessarily a big beast or whatever.
I think with all the 4 heads in chat, everyone can handle the 4 fight, but we'll see. Sorry. So some of the mods can be combined in recipes to produce more dangerous mods. Do you have a way of like discovering / tracking this recipe system at all, or is it kind of like a lookup PoEDB list or chart that someone's made? Sort of
so we have a hinting system in the inventory where if, and this isn't shown in the footage I should add, but this is in there now, if you have a complete recipe that you can just do, then there is a subtle shader effect on those things to say this is a component of a recipe. And once you put some in the window, then the remaining ones for that recipe have the shader effect on them. And the shader effect is more significant if the recipe is a larger, more important, valuable recipe. And so basically, as long as you just say, oh, I've got some stuff,
všechny podrobnosti potom probereme, až
that system there basically tells them to you without explicitly saying this plus this plus this in a UI somewhere. And so it'll be pretty obvious what recipes you can complete. The goal is not that these are like hidden rune words where you know, where the community spends weeks working them all out. Like, they'll get them in the first day or 2. You know, it's going to be, many people will be able to look at the wiki to get the list if they want, but you won't need to if you just have an okay memory and look at what the UI clues tell you.
In that case, how much impact on
Den 3 kompletní info o Atlasu? Co mě podceňuješ? Sobotu bude hotovo. Sobotu budou všichni bossové poražený.
So an example is Innocence Touched that was in the presentation, right? So that's the pinnacle of like up 4 or 5 tiers of reward combinations. It's hard to get to, you know, that's the thing that you put together by maps and only get to do occasionally. And that does some really interesting reward conversion. So you could just get Innocence Touched and then fight it and get those rewards, but you'll realize that juicing Innocence Touched with 3 other mods, A, makes it really blindingly difficult, and B, you know, gives you a giant pile of juiced rewards that are all like, you know, exponentially combinatorial with the other mods that you've chosen.
Well, that does answer my next question as well, then, that you can potentially recipe together already recipe things going up tiers of modifiers. So it sounds like that goes like 4 deep or something.
To some extent, we've understated the recipe part of it, because the recipe climbing is what the whole league is meant to be about. Except that a lot of the fun is just doing the fights and combining stuff in your own recipes. Like, to some extent, the make your own reward combinations, because the design team put together really interesting conversion, to some extent that took over from the official recipes, just because there's so much cool stuff people can discover there. So yeah, there's kind of 2 ways of getting good rewards from the league.
Are you worried that this will be a bit Talisman-esque in the end, then? Because that was kind of the similar concept with Talisman, but didn't work out so well in the end.
I think this is significantly more rewarding.
That's fair. Yep. That's fair. We were doing a lot of work for just the Talisman in that case. Is there like a substantial visual difference between the good recipe ones that you've made versus just the regular ones? Because I'm wondering if we're just kind of mapping on the fly and just tossing ones in, getting random recipes out, but saving the recipes, is that like easy to do?
The items themselves look more elaborate if they're higher tier ones. Okay. It'll be pretty obvious from the properties of it, and when you're fighting it, you'll certainly know that's an impactful boss. It basically just all scales up. Like, it'll be pretty obvious which ones are good.
To je expanze, ne?
How does Archnemesis work in parties then, the league side of things?
So the map owner, who's like the person who's controlling the area, gets the core Archnemesis mod drops, and we're very careful to try to get this to be about 2 per area.
The supplementary
also receive their own
drops. Fakt si myslím, že minimálně 3 hodiny.
System of trying to force it so that they're not getting too many per area, but they're still getting some. So there's a system there where players are all receiving drops as they play through to accumulate their own mods. Now, in an area, any of the players can do a recipe, but it's locked so that once you've put mods in it, that player who put the mods in must be the person who puts the remaining mods in. This prevents a TFT-style backdoor complicated trade system that would completely change how the league plays intentionally, but it also means that the rewards go to the person who put the mods in, right? So if you and I are playing and we've accumulated a bunch of stuff, and in this area I want to complete my recipe, so I stick my mods in, you can't help me by putting any of yours in to complete it early, and then I get the rewards from that because it was my recipe. as in the specific mod that's created and the specific things that drop from the combination we put together goes to me. You get, you know, random allocation of the other items the boss drops. But in the next area, you could do your recipe and you get the benefit of that one. So as we're playing through in a party, you just kind of alternate who's doing large recipes. And it works pretty well.
Get rolled, TFT. Classic. But if you're the map opener, you're the only one who can put the mods in the first place, right?
Any player can start putting mods in. So if someone rushes in and sticks a mod in ahead of you, then it's their instance in terms of putting mods in.
They've locked it in. That's unusual. That's very different to how it normally works.
This is basically through playtesting, where we want to make sure that it's done in a way that's fair. And unfortunately, the problem is if you have a system where I can put in half, like I've collected half of the best recipe and you've collected the other half, right? If I can stick my half in, you can stick your half in, then the balance is incredibly skewed in terms of people converging on the best stuff too quickly. So we would have to nerf it to compensate, which we don't want to do. And it also creates a system where now the second you get half of the best recipe, you go to some Discord and start spamming to get the other half. And that's not really the game. Here you have a progression that you can control. You don't have to spend a lot of time out of game trying to find it. And because of that, we can make it punchy and rewarding. We don't have to harvest it down to be bland because of the fact that there's tradability there.
Well, this is fantastic from the party play perspective, because I can, if I'm opening them all the maps, which is usually how we run it, then I can put all mine in and run mine, and then my partner can collect up a bunch of mods, and then I can open a map later in the future, and they can start putting in some mods without having to dance to their hideout and put in their map and stuff like that.
Exactly. So. The only concern is if you want to put stuff in that instance, and they also want to use that instance to put stuff in, then you have to kind of choose who's going to do it. And that's a race to who puts the first one in. But to be completely honest, there are more maps, right? Like, you know.
There's always another map. But yes, like all things in life, proper communication with your partner is very important. Communicate, collaborate. Alright. Can you search the Archnemesis inventory? Is there a search bar? I can see that being a requested feature if there isn't.
Like, as in you type in part of the name and it finds it. It's a reasonable suggestion. It hasn't come up. Like, you know, it wasn't a big issue because I think that by the time because you can control where they go, you take your good ones and you put them in the corner, and you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So you kind of do understand where your stuff is, but I don't see any harm in adding the search bar, right? Like, we're not philosophically opposed. It may already be done. In fact, there may be someone watching this going, I should do that. But you know,
some UX designers like, he doesn't see the harm in it.
Or they're thinking it's been in for 4
weeks. Tohle je nový skill, co jich ukazují, ty kuličky blikající. A vypadá to dost pěkně. Takovej arc zvláštní.
There wasn't last time I checked. Yeah, okay. We don't think so. The memory game again.
I just made more work for someone, sorry. HMS Sin asks, can Headhunters steal the Archnemesis monster's unique modifiers? Oh no.
That's a great question. I remember it being discussed. Can Headhunters steal the mods?
Vy spíš nemůžete říct,
I mean, they don't want it to. You just fixed a bug. It may already be handled, but there were some blank stares from...
Oh, getting it caught in time. You got a week.
Can a developer who's watching this please fix this? And if you don't, Reddit gets that one.
Very good. All right, we have a few other random questions, and then a bunch more questions from the community. Good job, mods. Okay, so I noticed that there are no new skills revealed this time. Why is that?
What your skills?
You weren't supposed to notice.
Oh, it's like that, isn't it?
We had 13 development weeks for this expansion, and we had a lot of scope.
Jestli nepřijde nový skilly, mně to vůbec nevadí, jako skillů v téhle hře je tolik.
It just didn't make the scope, right? And we also felt that the game actually has quite a lot of skills, and by buffing to significant archetypes so extensively, like we just literally took dozens of skills and made big improvements to them.
Doufám, že tyhle ty Eldritch i chory
combined with the new Eldritch and plus
a
lot of build enabling stuff, we're not worried about the game having nothing for people to do. It's a resourcing issue, and pretty much the fact that this isn't, you know, there's going to be plenty of new builds for people to play.
Well, yeah, I can imagine some people are going to be disappointed because a lot of people do specifically want to always play the new skills. But I was speaking to Bex a little bit about this earlier, and she was saying like our dev resource budget for making a new skill and getting it in is actually quite high. So it is kind of like a costing decision there.
It certainly is. Well, it's mostly, we'd rather do this expansion well than make a few skills. And to be honest, like, the number of players who want to specifically play the new skills, as a matter of course, is only like a small portion of the player base. And I'd rather make content for 100% than for like 7% or whatever. But, you know, obviously will be, you know, skills added to the game in the future. The other thing is, like, you know, occasionally players will say to us, hey, what you should do is not make new skills and instead fix the existing ones. And while that can't be true forever, it is something we've tried to do here. We've tried to take entire archetypes of bow users and handcast spellcasters and to fix them up quite a lot. So that should be impactful. And for people who want to try new skills, I'm sorry there aren't any in this particular one, but hopefully there are skills that have been new in the past that you haven't tried out yet that will now be a lot more powerful.
Okay. So Ultimatum has not yet made a return, though in some ways Archnemesis does remind me of it. But is there any word on its rework and return, as previously mentioned?
This was a resourcing issue as well. We realized that to get it in the game in the state we want requires quite a lot of work, and that wasn't going to fit in 3.17 alongside this stuff. The Atlas stuff has been rather large, and so we do intend to bring Ultimatum back in the right form, but it's not this time.
Ultimátum ještě se nevrací.
Potentially next time, DM. Awakened gems seem to keep getting... You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'll bring it back up again anyway. Awakened gems seem to keep getting nerfed. And I kind of guessed that with Cyrus and the Conquerors being semi-retired now, I guess, we'd be shifting away from them being a chase or an expected progression for builds. But it seems now that they've been made a drop from the Maven boss fights, they're staying core.
It's invitational. It's invitational.
How do you guys feel about Awakened gems in general, and what's the goal with them?
We see them as core, and we think they benefit many builds. In fact, we wish there were more of them that would benefit more builds. Like, it would be nice if there were Awakened support gems for literally everyone. This is not a feature announcement. That's literally just
Awakened Mirage Archer.
I don't even think we're planning any in the next few
guaranteed
expansions. We think it's important for you to have something that you can get from the Maven that will help improve your late game damage. The boss fights are hard, right? Like, you need this. It's punchy. You know, if you can use Awakened gems, you should definitely farm for them and get them.
So this is from the Maven's boss fights. The Maven boss fight as well. Does she get like a high chance to drop one or something?
I'm gonna dev check that.
Oh, it's like 9.
Awakened gems, are they from the Maven boss fight herself or from the...
It's invitation, ne?
From the boss fight itself, and the lesser ones that were previously just dropped by the...
It's invitation.
So the Maven herself is the one who drops the good ones, and the lesser ones that were previously from the Conquerors are the ones that come from the invitations.
Aha. Neboli... Takový ty běžnější, ty jsou z Invitation a Maven dává takový ty hodně vzácný, to co dával předtím jenom Sirus. Takže Chain, GMP, Multistrike a tak. Zatímco Code Penetration, Edit Code, to můžou dávat Invitation.
In fact, I shouldn't be saying stuff like this. We were reading some drafts of questions that we may be asked, right? You know, doing our prep for this. And we get to this exact point of what are we doing about Maven rewards with regard to, you know, is the Awakened Gem sufficient? And then we decided to buff a bunch of Maven uniques. So yes, to get to your exact point that the Maven rewards were underwhelming, there are buffs to those, which were added literally at the last minute in the patch notes. Like, the patch notes were approved and done and sent to translators, and the formatting's ready and we're good and we're celebrating. And then someone says, we need to buff these uniques, so everyone gets writing again. And so, I hope that actually happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good news if so. I hope so too. I'd like to see some spicy chase there for sure. All right. Okay, we've got some more community questions now, a lot. So apparently literally everyone, and I just have to read this proviso first. Bex said we could ask this question, apparently. So I guess blame. Why was this not presented from a hot tub?
Huh?
Thank you, Bex. Okay, so I have a hot tub at my house, and I hadn't used it in a couple of years. And when we did the well, it came with the house, I should add, but when we did the Halloween board, you know, the one that said one gigantic Atlas tree, Bex says, you're welcome. Oh, cute. Anyway, when we did the Halloween board and we had the stream from a hot tub, because of course that was topical back, you know, a few months ago when we did that, I thought to myself, I bet you I'm going to be asked to do this, and this thing needs cleaning. Like, it's been a few years since anyone used it. This hot tub needs to be sorted out. And so I was sitting there, like, hot summer sun, like getting sunburnt, scrubbing this hot tub, you know, in my spare time, just in case we needed to go on this live stream. And then, thankfully, made a judgment call that no, for the sake of a meme, I'm not going to, like, confuse 99% of the players.
Yeah.
But it could have happened. Like, there's a very close parallel reality here.
Yeah, the like 1% of people who pay uber attention to these memes would have loved it.
A jako, který jiný CEO může udělat prohlášení, naprosto klíčové prohlášení firmy z výřivky.
And then instantly the stream's cut off, and then we just, torpedoed a whole marketing thing,
All the press reporting focuses on you being on Hot Tub and doesn't care at all about the expansion. That's just what gets reported. Perfect. All right. Someone asks, how does the Ascendancy gems work with the Scion?
I don't think they do. The Ascendancy jewels, the Scion. Yeah. Oh, it does? You guys are smart. How does it work?
She has her own set.
Right, she has her own set of special mods.
Oh, so, yeah. Okay. That's that jewel though. I was like looking at it and I was like, holy moly, there's a lot of versions of that jewel.
We tried to make it clear in the stream, but to be clear, they have class restrictions, and they will give you an Ascendancy of your class from a different Ascendancy. So if you're a Deadeye, you can get a Pathfinder 1 or a Raider 1. You can't get a Juggernaut 1 as a Ranger.
Jo, takhle!
Wow. Okay.
Já myslel, že když jsi Deadeye, tak to dá Deadeyovskou věc. No tak to je mega krutý.
But it does not let you get something incredibly off class yet.
Yeah, okay, that's great. We don't have.
Je to z jedné klasy, ale z jiný Ascendancy, no tak to je mnohem mocnější, než jsem si myslel.
Which does have a bunch of off-class stuff, they clarify. So to answer your original question, yes, that's how you get your super off-class stuff.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so multiple layers stuff. You can splash stuff.
Co teďko říkal to poslední větu? Mě to super off-class, jsem neslyšel.
Yes. You're getting any Ranger Ascendancy on a Ranger. You don't have to be a Pathfinder to get an additional Pathfinder node. So it's not about getting an extra Ascendancy point. It's about getting an extra Ascendancy point outside of your Ascendancy class, but within your class.
To je mocný.
Okay. It also means from like a farming potential, if you're like wanting to sell these or something, you might want to be like the class that.
Jakože v solo self-foundu to člověk nesloží, že jo?
You don't find one for your class. It's like Hellfire Torches. You find one, and if you're lucky, it's your class.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. I was getting confused between the two things there.
There are 7 classes. They'll drop for a random class, and then the node that it picks for that class is one which is from any of its Ascendancies, and you need to be that class to equip it.
Okay, all right. But you're playing a Marauder, you can get a Ranger one to drop.
You're playing a Marauder, you can get a Ranger one, and that Ranger one will have any Ranger Ascendancy passive, including outside of the person who equips its class. Yeah, I made this more confusing than it needed to be with my explanation here.
I was surprised because we don't normally have tailored drops like that.
No, it's not a tailored drop. It's I'm just clarifying the fact that a Ranger cannot equip a Juggernaut Ascendancy skill from this.
Okay, but the question.
Ne, že nás nemá šanci. Tohle to je super, protože to je skutečně na úrovni Watchers Eye. A bude to strašně drahý. V trailize to bude reálný a bude to drahý.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Chancellor being an item with an implicit existing. Oh, 11 dev checks.
Unique. No, to mě zajímá.
It's similar to synthesized items where once they have these on it, you can't chance them into uniques.
Destroyed. Very nice.
And the Exile really is a game of will the community or our limited team of developers think of it first? You know, there's millions of you guys, and these guys here are real smart, and...
a lot of people are also asking about Tainted Currency.
No, Tainted Currency, co?
I believe Tainted Currency does not drop anymore, right guys? Yeah. No more Tainted Currency.
Ale nebude se mazat.
I really like Tainted Currency, so we may see it again in the future in some form, but no, all of Scourge is going away for now.
Nebude se to mazat, doufám, protože to je jeden z důvodů, proč jsem tolik hrál ty legy.
A very popular thing, and how do you guys feel about that? Because I feel like every time you guys have made Six Links easy to acquire, it's been universally praised.
Yeah. I feel if we made it so it auto-picked up items, people would praise it, and then if we made it so that, like, you know, these appear in a spreadsheet rather than a stash tab, people would praise it. And then if we made it so you don't need to log in for it to find the items, people would praise it. And then if it just emails you a daily update of how cool you are.
Calm down, calm
down. Easier Six Links is going to get praised until the game has no valid progression anymore.
Okay, while that may be true, I think this is slightly different because I think this touches on the issues with the current socketing system, which you guys already agreed to. Removing the whole thing in PoE2.
I was explicitly pushing for easier Six Links for the longest time, right? Like whenever there's an opportunity over the last decade to make Six Linking easier, I'm saying do it, do it, do it. So I agree in this case. partly because 6-linked items are going away in PoE 2, and now it's a matter of 6-linked gems. And
yeah, I figure, you know, it's going away soon. Why not just give everyone their 6 links pretty easily? You know, it's just it's so much nicer. But anyway, okay. All right. It's us. Would it be possible to color the new Implicits text according to the mod? Eldritch blue text and the other one red. Accessibility feature request.
You can press Alt to see more information, and that way the item looks normal and easily readable, and then you tap Alt and you get a overload of stuff.
Okay, alright.
We are putting it on the advanced mod description stuff, right?
Also, one's on the top and one's on the bottom.
Yeah. Which one is on the top, do you remember? There is an order, we'll check it. Yeah. It's likely the cleansing, it's likely the Searing Exarch is on the top. We'll find out though. So it's also worth noting we've removed the option for advanced mod hovers. Now it's just mandatory. For some reason, this is the thing we added with a default of off. So a new player installs the game, doesn't get stuff. So that's definitely just on with the option removed now. So anyone who hated it for some reason, it's mandatory.
Yeah, as a streamer, you often have to be like, why don't I get that text?
Okay, and here's an amazing thing for our international players. In this release, when you press Alt while looking at an item, it will show the unique name and base type in English in brackets, and so you can Google for them. So, I mean, I guess if you were having problems with this, you probably can't understand this. But anyway, someone please tell the international players that you can now see what the items are. And this is really important for builds. Like, imagine you're playing the game in a language and you struggle with English, and you find a cool unique, and you're looking at, say, the Russian name for it, and you Google for it to find out what build to play. You won't find the English build guides, whereas now you can find the English one. We've also added experimental support, like an early version of Japanese for testing. I forget the instructions of how to enable it. It might just be, I think you have to go /language Japanese on the command line, but if anyone would like to give us some feedback on that, we'll be opening a forum. It's not finished yet, like this is just the baseline kind of, you know, quarter of it.
Teďko 100 000 lidí bude mít přepnutý pát exile do japonštiny a nebudou vědět, jak se z toho dostat. Vlastně počítačíové v neděli.
I could just like read the patch notes to you all day and just delay but actually.
Well, I mean, you'll be releasing them like in a moment, so
yes,
it's alright. People can read. Cyclops Fear asks, will a blessed orb then re-roll the numbers on both Eldritch and Implicit at the same time, or only one of them, or any of them? I'll add.
Blessed orbs
na obem zároveň. Většina nemá range, jako rozsahy.
Yeah. So a lot of Eldritch Implicits do not have explicit ranges for the Implicits on them because they have 6 different ranks instead. And if they do have ranges, does Blessed Orb reroll them?
Předpokládám, že jo.
Right. Yeah. So it will work if there are any. We just can't think of any that currently have ranges.
Okay. There's a 2-part question here from Major Influx. Since there's no more unique watchstones to give +1 zone level, is there any way to get like higher level maps like 85 and whatnot?
Jo, to je pravda. Tohle bylo hodně dobře pomalý. Protože já bych potřeboval 85kový Blizzard helmy, jo? V Atlas pasivech to bude?
There's an Atlas passive for unique maps, but currently no.
A for unique jenom.
That kind of maybe answers the other question then, if there's any way to get item level 85 ritual helmets.
Právě.
So that kind of, I guess, kills that as well.
That's needed then, not at the moment, sorry.
Oops.
It's worth noting that our intention here is to continue to evolve this new endgame system in subsequent expansions. Like, the previous era of dropping an entirely new endgame every year may not necessarily happen a year from now. I mean, the goal basically is to continue working on this one because we like it and try to incrementally improve it in each expansion rather than dropping a completely new one each year. We think that will actually give people a lot more to work towards in the endgame.
To byla zrovna jedna z věcí, na kterou jsem se těšil, když bude rituál, tak to teda není moc důvod hrát rituál za 13 chaosů, si myslím.
There was a lot of talk about, like, well, there's major damage buffs for handcasting and bow builds, hit bow builds, but totally not at work 64 asks, will there be any changes regarding mobility and defense options for handcasters?
We did a massive defense buff in one of the recent expansions, and as you'll notice, we didn't nerf any of that, so, well, I don't know, maybe we did, but I don't think we nerfed any of that. And so, no, the answer is we don't have any improvements in this expansion beyond the ones that we listed in the manifesto. I mean, the full patch notes are coming out very soon, so there may be bits and pieces that I'm unaware of, but yeah, you've heard the majority of that stuff that affects that.
All right. Shade Finale asks, is Elevated Nemesis also removed from the game? You said only Awakened Nemesis specifically in the video. I don't actually know what that means.
Já tomu rozumím. Na Maven Watchstone, jestli zůstane Nemesis 4.
Sextants?
Nemesis 4 sextanty, ano.
Sorry, you said Awakened Nemesis? An Elevated Nemesis?
This is Elevated Nemesis. Nem 4? Chat's typing?
Ano, přesně.
What does that mean?
Oni vůbec nevědějí.
The Elevated Sextant does not give that mod anymore.
Ah, okay, they're talking about Sextant mods. Okay. Alright. Pie by Pie asks, does quest tracking help guide us through the new Atlas and bosses?
I believe it will do, right?
Quest tracking.
New Atlas quests. Do they have a quest tracker? Yes. Yep.
I think we're getting the wrap things up signal, so I'll ask a big question is reports on hard mode. It was said to be happening early to mid this league, right? Is that still the case?
Kde hard mode?
We really expect hard mode to be in some form of early testing before the next live stream. Or we'll be releasing it at the next league. Right? I'm going to make sure that one of these two happens. So the full...
A co je na next live stream?
Like there's face pounding going on. Because it's a lot of work, right, to finish it. It's been taking a while.
Do příští ligy.
So the overpromises by me are not appreciated, but yeah, I think it's quite doable. It'll just be, you know, some weekends for me to get that sorted out.
All right, and kind of a follow-up to some stuff that was started earlier as well. Is there any more like act reworks planned?
So there's a bunch of work that happened in Act 2 in this expansion, I believe. But it's not as extensive as the Act 1 stuff that we did before. Can you clarify? Yeah, resourcing basically is that us revamping the earlier acts is like the last thing on the list of things we want to get. I mean, we want to get to it, but it gets pushed out each time relatively easily. So, yeah, we'll keep working on that as we can do.
All right, and also people will also just want to know if there's any like PoE Mobile or PoE 2 news as well that they can like keep an eye out for.
They are both coming along really well. We decided not to include any content in this particular live stream, both because it was already very featureful and because we'd honestly rather get more stuff to show you guys. And you know, there's still a way on both projects, right? Like, you know, they're not being released this year. Very likely, I mean, our internal target that we're looking at is tentatively the end of next year, right? So that's could change, but that's what we're looking at. And so I would expect a good year of clear, like, hype marketing for those as we get closer to them, and that year hasn't quite started. So we may do an update in the interim. It really depends, and I kind of feel it's one of those things where we don't want to just drip feed tiny little bits and pieces, because if we like, it's PoE 2 stuff, and then we show you a small thing, people will say, is that literally all you've done in the last year? And it, you know, gives the wrong impression. So I would rather actually have something impactful to show. And, you know, making a PoE 2 trailer takes a lot of work.
So we're kind of looking forward to a big hype kind of reveal again. Like, remind people like, oh yeah, this is what you're excited for back at Exile.
Don't expect PoE 2 at the next live stream necessarily, right? Like, it's...
Yeah.
Čemu říkají next live stream? To myslí příští ligu?
Will be worth it. And in the meantime, we want to make meaningful Path of Exile expansions, and you know there'll be plenty to do in this one. In fact, Twitch chat was saying, "Is this PoE 2? Should be called PoE 2" from some of the stuff we announced. So I appreciated that.
Well, we've certainly been getting a lot of PoE 2 stuff that was teased, and now we're going to be endgame rework, so super exciting. Look, there was a ton more questions, folks. I thank you all for asking them. I tried to get through as many as I could, but we are holding up the patch notes. So thank you very much for your time, Chris. We're going to let you go, and you can go get those patch notes out. Press the button, please.
Yep. Right, enjoy the league, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you later.
Toto bylo druhý video ohledně tohoto uvedení ligy. Teďko bude další video, pokud jste na YouTube, podívejte se v popisu, tam bude odkaz na playlist, tak ať vidíte všechno. Teďko se podíváme na ty trailery, co jsme už viděli. Takže jednak ligy, jednak expanze, to bude celkem dlouhý. A potom se podíváme na stránky ligy a expanze. A potom ještě v dalším videu bude čtení patch noteu. Tak, uvidíme se za chviličku.